have you ever noticed something strange? Two people can stand in the exact same storm. One breaks, the other transforms. Same pain, same rejection, same failures. But one person looks at the darkness and says, "This is the end of me." And the other whispers, "This is where I become stronger." What creates that difference? Not talent, not luck, not money. It is self-belief. And the painful truth is, most people don't lose because life is hard. They lose because somewhere along the journey, they stopped believing in themselves. They started listening to old failures, old heartbreaks, old opinions, old voices, and slowly their confidence became weaker than their fear. But listen carefully. Before this year ends, you can rebuild yourself, not by changing your entire life overnight, but through small daily rituals that reprogram the way you see yourself. Because self-belief is not born in one motivational moment. It is built daily. And today, I want to share 6 powerful rituals that can make your mind unshakable. Not fake confidence, not arrogance, real inner strength. The kind that remains steady even when life becomes uncertain. The first ritual is speaking to you. Ourself like someone worth saving, because the voice inside your head quietly becomes the architect of your entire life. Most people think confidence comes from achievements, applause, or success. But confidence actually begins in invisible moments, tiny moments, when nobody is watching. The way you speak to yourself after making a mistake. The way you react when life embarrasses you. The way you look at yourself in silence. That inner voice matters more than people realize. A harsh world can hurt you once, but a harsh inner voice can hurt you every single day. And sadly, many people have become full-time bullies to themselves without even noticing it. They wake up tired and immediately attack themselves. Look at you, still behind. You never finish anything that everybody else figured life out, except you. Imagine carrying around a roommate like that 24 hours a day. You would move out within a week. Yet many people allow that voice to live rent-free inside their mind for years. A young man once told me, "I don't think I hate myself, but I definitely don't speak to myself kindly." That sentence stayed with me, because many people are not destroyed by dramatic tragedy. You are slowly worn down by daily inner disrespect, like water dripping on stone, drip by drip, year by year. And the strange thing is, these same people are often incredibly kind to others. They encourage friends. They comfort strangers. They forgive everybody except themselves. A woman can burn dinner and laugh about it if her friend does it. But if she burns dinner, suddenly she acts like the entire nation has fallen apart. "I can't do anything right." Really? The rice is overcooked, not your destiny. Calm down. Sometimes the mind behaves like a movie critic who got fired from every cinema but still keeps reviewing your life aggressively. Nothing is ever good enough for it. You clean the house, it notices the dust. You work hard, it notices what you didn't finish. You improve, it reminds you where you used to fail. Exhausting, isn't it? And here is what many people do not understand. Your brain is always listening. Always. Even when you speak casually about yourself, especially then. If every day you repeat, "I'm awkward, I'm lazy, I'm not smart, I'm unattractive," your mind slowly accepts those words as instructions, not observations. It begins arranging your behavior around tea. A boy who repeatedly says, "I'm bad at talking to people," starts avoiding conversations. Then, because he avoids conversations, he never improves. And then his fear feels true. This is how people unknowingly build prisons with their own language. Brick by brick, sentence by sentence. Meanwhile, another person with the same fears tells himself, "I'm still learning." That one small change creates movement instead of paralysis. One voice creates possibility. The other creates surrender. The scary part? Both voices sound believable after enough repetition. Think about a child learning how to walk. The child falls again and again. Imagine if babies spoke like adults. One fall and the baby would sit on the floor saying, "This walking thing isn't for me." Others are naturally gifted. "I'll just remain here near the sofa forever." Thankfully, babies do not overanalyze life. They fall, cry for 3 seconds, get distracted by a spoon, then try again. Somewhere along the journey to adulthood, people stopped treating mistakes as part of growth and started treating them as proof of worthlessness. One bad presentation at work and suddenly a person questions their entire future. One rejection. And they start narrating their life like a tragic documentary. Here we see Mark in his natural habitat, Rejected by one girl in college and emotionally retired ever since. Sometimes we must laugh at the drama our mind creates. Not to dismiss pain, pain is real, but to stop worshipping every negative thought like it is sacred truth. There was an older taxi driver I once met who taught me something beautiful without realizing it. His car was old, the seats squeaked, the air conditioner sounded like it was fighting for survival, but the man himself radiated peace. He said, "Every morning before I start driving, I sit quietly for 2 minutes and bless myself." I smiled and asked, "Bless yourself?" He nodded proudly. "Yes. If I don't speak well to myself before meeting the world will eat me alive." What wisdom! Most people begin the day by grabbing their phone and absorbing stress before even greeting their own soul. News, comparison, pressure, noise. No wonder the mind feels weak before breakfast. That taxi driver understood something powerful. Your inner world must be prepared before facing the outer world. Otherwise, every opinion becomes a knife. Every delay becomes a disaster. Every criticism becomes personal. And let me tell you something honestly, many people are waiting for confidence before they start respecting themselves. That day will never come. Self-respect comes first. Confidence grows afterward. A garden does not bloom because someone shouted at the flowers every morning. Growth requires care, patience, attention. In the same way, your mind responds to the emotional environment you create daily. If every thought is harsh, fearful, and punishing, eventually your spirit becomes tired. Not lazy, tired. There is a difference. Some people are not lacking discipline. They are emotionally exhausted from fighting themselves every single day. They smile outside while internally carrying a courtroom where they are constantly the accused. Every mistake becomes evidence against them. Every flaw becomes another reason to deny themselves peace. That is not motivation. That is emotional warfare. So start changing the tone of your inner conversations. Slowly, gently, not fake positivity, real compassion. When you fail, speak to yourself the way a wise friend would. Okay, that hurt, but you are still growing. When you feel behind in life, remind you, ourselves that trees do not compete with each other. One tree grows mangoes, another gives shade, another blooms in a different season. Your timeline is not broken simply because it looks different. And when your mind says you're too late, ask yourself late according to whom? Society, social media, your cousin who suddenly became a crypto expert for 6 months before disappearing completely. Relax. Life is not a race with a universal finish line. The people who build lasting self-belief are usually not the loudest people. They are the ones quietly learning how to stand beside themselves during difficult moments instead of abandoning themselves emotionally. Because at the end of the day, you will spend more time with your own mind than with anyone else on earth. More than friends, more than family, more than partners. Which means your relationship with yourself affects everything. The way you work, the way you recover, the way you dream. A person constantly insulted internally begins shrinking without realizing it. They stop trying, stop risking, stop believing. But a person who learns to speak to themselves with patience begins walking differently through life. Their energy changes, their posture changes, even their eyes change. Not because life suddenly became easy, but because they no longer add unnecessary cruelty to their own struggle. And sometimes that small shift, that quiet shift, changes an entire human being from the inside out. The second ritual is keeping one promise to yourself every single day, because self-belief is built when your mind learns that your words actually mean something. Most people think confidence comes from big achievements, but real confidence is much quieter than that. It is deeply personal. It grows in tiny invisible moments, moments where you say you will do something, and then you actually do it. That is how inner trust is formed. Think about relationships in life. If someone keeps lying to you, canceling plans, disappearing and breaking promises, eventually you stop trusting them. Even if they smile nicely, even if they have good intentions, trust breaks slowly. Well, the same thing happens inside you. Every time you tell yourself tomorrow I'll change, and tomorrow comes with the exact same excuses, your mind notices. Every broken promise becomes another crack in your self-respect. And after a year of this, people wonder why they feel weak when chasing goals. Their own mind no longer believes their words. A man once told me he had planned to wake up early every morning for almost 4 years. 4 years. Every night he became a philosopher. Tomorrow is a new beginning. "Dad, my future starts now. I will become disciplined." Then morning arrived, and suddenly his blanket became emotionally supportive. His pillow felt like a long-term relationship. The alarm clock became the enemy of humanity. We laugh at this because it is human. So many people are full of beautiful intentions but weak consistency. And here is the danger: when this pattern repeats too often, your brain quietly stops taking you seriously. You become like that friend who always says, "I'm 5 minutes away," while still standing in the shower choosing shampoo. Eventually, nobody believes him anymore. In the same way, your inner world stops believing your motivation speeches because your actions never follow. And the painful part is, people often make promises to everybody except themselves. They show up for meetings, they reply to work emails, they keep commitments to clients. But the promises they make to their own soul, those are the first to be abandoned. "I'll rest properly," ignored. "I'll start taking care of my health," delayed. "I'll finally work on my dream," postponed again. Slowly, a person begins sending themselves a terrible message: "You are not important enough for me to show up for." That message damages confidence more than failure ever could, because confidence is not only about winning in life. It is about knowing deep down, "I can rely on myself." That feeling changes everything. A person who trusts themselves walks differently, speaks differently, decides differently. Even in uncertainty, there is stability inside them because they know they will not abandon themselves when things become difficult. A young woman once shared something heartbreaking with me. She said, "I don't think my problem is laziness anymore. I think I've just disappointed myself too many times."
What honesty!
What painful honesty. She had spent years setting giant goals every Sunday night and breaking them by Wednesday afternoon. Gym plans, business plans, study plans, meditation plans, entire personality transformations before breakfast. And every unfinished promise became emotional baggage. Eve. Ultimately, she stopped dreaming altogether because dreaming started feeling embarrassing. Do you see how dangerous this becomes? People think broken promises only affect productivity. No, they affect identity. The mind starts whispering, "Why even try? You never follow through anyway." And once that voice becomes strong, even simple tasks begin to feel heavy. Not because the task is impossible, because the relationship with oneself has become fragile. That is why small promises matter so much. Tiny promises, almost laughably small. Read for 10 minutes. Drink more water. Walk around the block. Make your bed. Pray for 5 quiet minutes. Write 1 page. Not because these actions magically change your life overnight, but because every completed promise sends a signal inward: "Fuss, keep my word." That sentence is powerful, deeply powerful. A tiny act done consistently carries more strength than dramatic motivation that disappears in 2 days. Imagine trying to build a bridge using paper. It collapses immediately. That is how motivation alone works. But small repeated actions, those are bricks. Real bricks. Over time, they build something solid beneath your feet. People underestimate consistency. Tenzi because it looks boring. But boring things build extraordinary lives. Nobody claps while roots grow underground, yet roots are the reason trees survive storms. There is also something beautiful that happens psychologically when you keep promises to yourself. Your mind becomes calmer, less argumentative, less chaotic, because inner conflict reduces. Think about it, many people wake up already exhausted because their mind has heard the same unfinished promises for years. We should exercise, we should save money, we should stop wasting time. The brain becomes like a tired parent listening to a child who keeps saying, "I'll clean my room later." At some point, the parent stops believing it. In the same way, your inner voice becomes skeptical of your own ambition. But when actions become consistent, even in small ways, your mind slowly relaxes. It stops fighting you. There is alignment now. Your words and actions begin shaking hands instead of arguing constantly. And that inner peace, that quiet self-respect becomes fuel for bigger transformation. And please understand this: clearly keeping promises to yourself is not about perfection. Some people hear discipline and immediately imagine becoming a robot with green smoothies and 6 alarms at 5 in the morning. Relax. Human beings are messy. Some days you will fail. Some days you will oversleep, procrastinate, eat the unhealthy snack, avoid the task, and suddenly convince yourself that watching random videos about ancient sharks is somehow productive research. It happens. The goal is not becoming flawless. The goal is becoming trustworthy to yourself over time. That means when you fall, you return. You return again and again. A trustworthy person is not someone who never stumbles. It is someone who keeps showing up after stumbling. There is strength in returning. Quiet strength, mature strength. I once met an old carpenter who worked with incredible patience. Every morning he arrived at the same small workshop before sunrise. No drama. No motivational quotes painted on the wall. Just steady effort. One day I asked him how he became so disciplined. He smiled and said something simple. I stopped asking myself what I feel like doing. I started asking myself what kind of man I wanted to become. That stayed with me, because many people live according to moods. If motivation comes, they work. If emotio, NS cooperate, they move forward. But moods are like weather constantly changing. A meaningful life cannot be built on emotional weather patterns. It must be built on deeper commitments. And every small promise you keep becomes a vote for the person you are becoming. Every repeated action whispers to your mind, you can trust me now. Slowly, the broken relationship within begins healing. The third ritual is spending time away from noise, because a distracted mind slowly forgets the sound of its own soul. Most people are not truly tired from work. They are tired from constant mental traffic, notifications, opinions, trends, messages, everybody talking all the time. The modern world has become like a crowded room where thousands of people are screaming at once, and somehow we expect ourselves to feel peaceful inside it. From the moment many people wake up, their mind is already occupied by somebody else's voice. They reach for the phone before even greeting their own thoughts. And within minutes, they are emotionally dragged into 10 different worlds. Someone got richer. Someone got married. Someone traveled somewhere beautiful. Someone achieved something. NG impressive before 8 in the morning while you are still negotiating with your bedsheet about whether life is worth facing today. Slowly, without realizing it, people lose connection with themselves because they spend more time consuming other people's lives than understanding their own. And the strange thing is, silence feels uncomfortable now, deeply uncomfortable. Sit alone in a quiet room for 10 minutes and watch what happens. Many people instantly panic. They reach for music. They check messages. They suddenly remember they urgently need to reorganize a drawer that has not mattered since 2012.
Why?
Because silence forces us to meet ourselves without distraction. And honestly, that meeting can feel awkward at first. Some people have spent years running from their own thoughts. One young man told me, whenever things become quiet, I start overthinking. I asked him, have you ever considered that maybe the thoughts are not attacking you? Maybe they have simply been waiting years for your attention. That changed something in him, because the goal is not to fear silence. The goal is to become familiar with your own inner world again. There was a woman I owe. NCE heard about who lived near the ocean. Every evening after work, she would sit by the water for 20 minutes without her phone. No music, no podcast, no endless scrolling. Just waves, wind, and her own breathing. Her friends thought she was strange. How do you sit there doing nothing? They asked. She smiled and said, I'm not doing nothing. I'm returning to myself. What a beautiful sentence. Returning to yourself. Because somewhere between deadlines, comparison, noise, and survival, many people drift far away from who they actually are. They know what everybody else thinks. They know celebrity gossip. They know random facts from videos they will never need. But ask them what truly makes your heart feel alive, and suddenly the room becomes quiet. Ask them what kind of life do you genuinely want, and many cannot answer. Not because they are foolish, but because noise has buried their inner voice under layers of distraction. And distraction is dangerous because it feels harmless. That is why people underestimate it. Nobody wakes up thinking, today I will slowly disconnect from myself. It happens quietly. 5 minutes on social media becomes an hour. One video becomes 20. A quick scroll before bed somehow turns into watching a man build a tree house in the middle of a forest while you question every decision you have ever made. Human attention is fragile, very fragile, and the world is competing aggressively for it. Why? Because wherever attention goes, energy follows. If your attention is constantly pulled outward, your inner life becomes weak from neglect. Imagine owning a beautiful garden but never watering it because you spend all day admiring everybody else's flowers. Eventually, your own soil becomes dry, not because you lack potential, but because you abandoned your own space emotionally. A young college student once admitted something painfully honest. He said, "I don't even know if my goals are really mine anymore." Think about that. How many people are chasing lives they never truly chose? Careers they secretly hate, lifestyles they don't even enjoy, dreams borrowed from strangers online. Sometimes people are not failing because they are incapable. They are failing because they are disconnected from themselves. They are climbing ladders leaning against the wrong wall. And silence helps reveal this. Quiet moments expose truth gently, sometimes uncomfortably, but honestly. When the noise disappears, your real feelings begin surfacing. You start noticing what drains you, what fulfills you, what wounds you, what inspires you. That awareness is powerful. A noisy mind reacts to life constantly. A quiet mind understands life more deeply. And let us be honest for a moment, many people are addicted to noise because noise helps them avoid pain. If the room stays loud enough, they never have to hear their own loneliness. If the phone stays busy enough, they never have to face unresolved emotions. Some people are terrified of silence because silence removes the performance. There is nobody left to impress there, just you, just your thoughts, just your truth. But healing often begins exactly there, in stillness, in uncomfortable honesty. A man once described his first quiet morning walk without headphones as meeting a stranger who happened to be me. I laughed when he said it, but I understood completely. For years, he had filled every empty second with stimulation. Suddenly, he could hear birds again, hear his breathing, hear his own thoughts clearly. And strangely enough, he realized his mind was not as broken as he felt. Read, it was simply overcrowded. Nature understands this lesson better than humans do. Have you noticed that the strongest things in nature grow quietly? Trees do not scream while growing. Mountains do not announce their existence every morning. The moon does not beg for attention. Yet they remain powerful, stable, grounded. Human beings, however, often mistake constant activity for meaningful living. Busy, while internally exhausted. One man proudly told me, "I haven't had a quiet moment in months." He expected admiration. Honestly, it sounded tragic. Imagine being unable to sit peacefully with yourself for even a few minutes. That is not success. That is emotional overcrowding. Even machines overheat without rest. Yet people expect their minds to function clearly while feeding them endless stimulation every waking hour. No wonder anxiety grows so easily in modern life. The mind never gets a chance to breathe. So begin creating small islands of silence in your day. Tiny moments. Sit with your morning tea without checking your phone. Walk without constant audio filling your ears. Watch the sunset without trying to photograph it for approval from strangers. Learn to exist in moments without immediately turning them into content. At first, your mind may resist. It may twitch around like a bored toddler searching for entertainment. Be patient with it. Slowly, very slowly, something beautiful begins happening. Your thoughts become clearer. Your emotions become less chaotic. You begin hearing your intuition again. Not fear, not noise. Intuition. That quiet inner knowing that has been buried beneath distraction for years. And once a person reconnects with that deeper voice inside themselves, they are able to find the strength and courage to face their fears and overcome their challenges. They stop being controlled so easily by every opinion, every trend, every comparison, every passing storm around them. The fourth ritual is doing hard things on purpose, because every time you willingly face discomfort, you teach your mind that fear is not your master. Most people spend their lives trying to avoid uncomfortable moments, avoid difficult conversations, avoid rejection, avoid failure, avoid embarrassment, avoid uncertainty. And for a while, avoidance feels safe, warm, comfortable, like staying under a blanket during cold weather while the world outside looks stressful and demanding. But comfort has a hidden cost. Every time you run away from something difficult, your fear quietly grows stronger in the background. It grows silently, like weeds spreading under a house. At first, it seems harmless. Then one day you realize your confidence has become fragile because your entire life has been built around avoiding discomfort instead of facing it. A person who avoids hard things eventually starts doubting themselves in small situations too. Even tiny challenges begin feeling heavy because the mind has forgotten its own strength. There was a young man who was terrified of public speaking, not nervous, terrified. His hands shook so badly during presentations that he once dropped his notes and accidentally kicked the water bottle across the room, like he was starting a football match instead of a speech. The whole class laughed. For weeks, he replayed that moment in his mind like a tragic movie scene. After that, he avoided every opportunity to speak publicly. He chose silence whenever possible. But something interesting happened. His fear did not shrink because he avoided it. It expanded. Soon he became nervous even introducing himself to new people. Then one day, tired of feeling trapped by his own fear, he made a strange decision. Why weak? He would intentionally put himself in small, uncomfortable situations, asking strangers simple questions, speaking briefly in meetings, raising his hand once in class. Tiny acts, awkward acts, sweaty palm acts, and slowly, his nervous system learned a powerful lesson. I can survive discomfort. That realization changed his life more than confidence ever could. Because confidence is not born in comfort, it is born in exposure. A muscle becomes stronger by resistance. A sword becomes sharper through friction. Even diamonds are created under pressure. Yet human beings often expect emotional strength without emotional challenge. We want courage delivered gently like online shopping, fast shipping, no struggle, no risk. But life does not work that way. Strength enters through resistance. Think about a child learning to ride a bicycle. The child wobbles, falls, panics, sometimes crashes into a bush, and suddenly declares retirement from cycling forever. But eventually balance comes through repetition and discomfort, not through watching motivational bicycle videos from the couch. In the same way, many adults are standing beside the bicycle of their dreams, analyzing it end, Leslie, but refusing to pedal because they fear falling in front of people. And honestly, many fears lose their power the moment you stop treating them like giant monsters. The mind is dramatic sometimes, very dramatic. It behaves like a movie director trying to turn every challenge into a disaster film. You send one risky email and your brain acts like the FBI is about to arrive. You try something new and suddenly your mind whispers, what if everybody laughs at you?
Everybody?
Really? Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives to organize a conference about your mistakes. One woman once told me she avoided going to the gym for 2 years because she thought people would judge her. Then finally she gathered the courage to go and realized nobody cared. Half the people were staring at mirrors. The other half were trying not to die on treadmills. That moment taught her something. Freeing fear often exaggerates how much attention the world is paying to you. There is also something deeply spiritual about willingly facing difficulty. It changes the relationship you have with yourself. Every hard thing you survive becomes evidence. Evidence that you are more capable than you. Our fear claimed, a father working 2 jobs to feed his family may not call himself courageous, but courage lives in him. A single mother rebuilding her life after heartbreak may not see herself as strong, but strength is already present in her daily choices. Sometimes people imagine courage as grand heroic moments, but often courage looks ordinary, quiet, human, waking up again after disappointment, trying again after rejection, loving again after betrayal, showing up again after failure. That is real bravery. Not loud bravery, real bravery. I remember hearing about an elderly man who decided to learn swimming at the age of 68. Everyone laughed lovingly at him.
Why now? They asked.
He said something beautiful. Because I'm tired of letting fear decide what season of life I'm allowed to live. Think about that. How many people unknowingly hand their entire future over to fear? Fear becomes the decision maker. Fear chooses the opportunities. Fear controls relationships. Fear edits dreams before they are even attempted. And slowly life becomes smaller and smaller, safer and safer. Until one day, a person realizes they have not truly lived, they have only avoided discomfort. Efficiently, that realization hurts deeply. Because the greatest pain is not failure. It is potential left untouched. And yes, doing hard things will humble you sometimes, very quickly. A man begins jogging after years of inactivity, and after 40 seconds, he is negotiating spiritually with the universe for oxygen. A person tries meditation and discovers their mind behaves like a caffeinated monkey jumping across rooftops. Someone starts learning guitar and accidentally creates sounds that make nearby dogs emotionally concerned. But this is good. Good. Humbling experiences remind you that growth is supposed to feel awkward in the beginning. Seeds look nothing like trees. Beginners look nothing like masters. Every skilled person once looked clumsy. Every confident speaker once sounded nervous. Every strong person once doubted themselves quietly at night. The difference is not talent. Often the difference is willingness to stay uncomfortable long enough for growth to happen. And over time, something incredible begins happening when you intentionally face difficult things. Your identity changes. Not through motivational slogans, through lived experience. You stop seeing yourself as fragile. You stop panicking every time uncertainty appears. Life still challenges you, of course. Fear still visits sometimes. But now there is a deeper steadiness inside because your mind remembers. We've survived difficult moments before. That memory matters. A person who has repeatedly walked through discomfort carries a different energy into life. Calmer, stronger, less easily shaken. They understand something many people never learn: discomfort is not always a warning sign. Sometimes discomfort is simply the doorway to a larger version of yourself waiting on the other side. The fifth ritual is stopping yourself from building your identity around failure, because a mistake is an event, not a definition of who you are. So many people carry old failures like permanent name tags stitched onto their soul. One breakup becomes I am unlovable. One failed business becomes I am bad at life. One rejection becomes I am not enough. And slowly, without realizing it, they stop seeing failure as something they experienced and start seeing it as who they are. That is dangerous, deeply dangerous, because the human mind always moves in the direction of identity. If a person secretly they believe they are broken, they will begin acting like someone who expects disappointment. They hesitate more, trust less, dream smaller, not because life has officially ended for them, but because they emotionally bury themselves too early. There was a man who failed his driving test 5 times. 5 times. By the 6th attempt, he walked into the test center looking like a soldier returning to war. Sweaty hands, nervous breathing, dramatic background music probably playing in his imagination. At one point during the test, he became so anxious that instead of turning on the windshield wipers, he activated the turn signal repeatedly like the car was trying to communicate in Morse code. He failed again. And after that, he started joking constantly, "I'm just not smart." People laughed with him, but secretly he had begun believing it. Not because of the driving test itself, but because repeated failure slowly entered his identity. That happens to many people. A painful experience knocks on the door once, then they invite it in permanently and give it a room inside their mind. And the strange thing is, human beings are incredibly compassionate toward other people's failures, but brutal toward their own. If your friend fails, you encourage them. It's okay, you'll bounce back. If your brother loses money, you remind him that one setback does not define his future. But when you fail, suddenly your inner voice transforms into a disappointed school principal holding a clipboard from hell. Unacceptable. Embarrassing. You should have known better. Why do we speak to ourselves this way? Why do we expect ourselves to move through life flawlessly when every single human being is learning through mistakes? Even babies learn by falling repeatedly. Imagine a toddler falling once while learning to walk and then sitting down dramatically saying, "Clearly movement is not aligned with my personal brand." It sounds ridiculous, yet adults do this emotionally all the time. A woman once shared with me that she still felt ashamed about a business failure that happened almost 10 years earlier. 10 years. The business was gone. The debt was gone. Most people barely remembered it. But inside her mind, the story was still alive every single day. She said something heartbreaking. "Whenever I think about trying again, I feel like the old version of me whispers, 'Don't embarrass us.'" Twice. That sentence reveals how failure can become psychological handcuffs. The event ends, but the emotional identity remains. And many people do not realize this. The pain of failure is usually temporary. The identity built around failure is what becomes destructive. One moment passes, but the meaning attached to it follows people for years. They stop applying for opportunities, stop expressing themselves, stop trusting their abilities. Not because they truly cannot succeed, but because an old memory keeps sitting in the driver's seat of their life. And honestly, failure itself is rarely clean or graceful. Sometimes it is awkward, messy, humbling. Sometimes life embarrasses you publicly. A man practices an important speech for weeks and then forgets half of it in front of everyone. A woman spends hours preparing a beautiful meal only to accidentally burn it while watching one quick video online that somehow turned into 40 minutes of watching strangers renovate cabins in the forest. Human life is chaotic sometimes. But chaos does not mean you are cursed. It means you are alive. Yet many people take ordinary human struggles and turn them into lifelong emotional verdicts. They confuse moments with identity. They mistake chapters for the entire story. And because of that, they carry unnecessary shame for years over experiences that were simply part of being human. There is something important you must understand. Growth often looks like failure while it is happening. Think about learning any new skill. At first you are terrible, confused, slow, clumsy. A beginner guitarist sounds like the instrument itself is emotionally distressed. A new cook creates meals that could legally qualify as chemistry experiments. A first-time entrepreneur makes mistakes that later seem obvious. This is normal, completely normal. But people see the awkward beginning and immediately assume they are incapable. Why? Because modern culture worships polished results but hides messy progress. We see the finished building, not the years of dust and broken bricks behind it. We see confidence, not the trembling beginnings. So people assume successful individuals were naturally gifted from birth, while secretly almost every strong person you admire has failed quietly more times than you can imagine. I remember hearing about a teacher who kept an old cracked clay pot on his desk. The student finally asked why he never replaced it. The teacher smiled and said, "This pot reminds me not to judge things too early." Then he explained that years earlier, he accidentally dropped it while moving houses. The crack seemed like the end of its usefulness. But later, he noticed something beautiful. Whenever he watered plants with that pot, tiny streams of water leaked gently through the cracks, watering flowers along the path. The brokenness created unexpected beauty. That story stayed with me because many people see only their cracks, their mistakes, their scars. But life has a strange way of creating wisdom, compassion, patience, and strength through the very experiences people wish had never happened. Some of the kindest people you will ever meet are people who once felt shattered themselves. And maybe this is why healing requires a new relationship with the past. Not denial, not pretending painful things never happened, but refusing to let old failures become permanent identity cards. You are not the divorce, not the rejection, not the lost opportunity, not the bad decision you made during a confusing season of life. Human beings are constantly evolving creatures, constantly learning, constantly becoming. A tree does not refuse to grow because one branch broke during a storm. It keeps reaching upward toward light. In the same way, your life does not lose meaning because of one painful chapter. And when people finally stop introducing themselves emotionally through their old wounds, something shifts inside them. Their posture changes, their energy softens, possibility returns. Because now, instead of saying, "This failure is who I am," they begin saying, "That experience taught me." But it does not own me. The sixth ritual is ending every day by remembering who you are becoming, because transformation is easier to continue when you learn to notice it while it is still small. Most people end their days the wrong way. They collapse into bed carrying unfinished worries, replaying awkward conversations from 6 years ago, questioning their future at midnight like exhausted philosophers with low battery. The mind becomes noisy at night, very noisy. A tiny mistake from the morning suddenly feels like a documentary series. Why did I say that? Why am I behind? What am I even doing with my life? And because many people only focus on what is missing, they slowly become blind to how much they are already growing. That is dangerous. Because when progress becomes invisible, motivation begins dying quietly. A person who cannot see their own growth eventually starts believing they are standing still, even when they are slowly evolving every single day. There was a young woman who kept a tiny notebook beside her bed. Nothing fancy. No motivational stickers. No dramatic quotes written in gold ink. Every night before sleeping, she wrote down 3 simple things. One thing she handled better than before. One thing she learned. And one thing she was grateful she survived. That was it. Some nights the entries were beautiful. I spoke up for myself today. Other nights they were hilariously human. Did not cry during the family group call. Only checked my ex's profile twice. Managed to cook without setting off the smoke alarm. But over time, something incredible happened. She stopped feeling emotionally stuck. Why? Because she was finally paying attention to her own becoming. Most people only notice growth when it becomes dramatic and obvious. But real transformation usually whispers before it roars. And honestly, life changes people, little by little, long before visible results appear. A person who once stayed silent finally says no calmly. A man who used to panic during conflict now breathes before reacting. Someone who once hated themselves starts taking walks, drinking water, sleeping better, not because they are perfect now, but because they finally believe they are worth caring for. These moments matter deeply. But modern life trains people to ignore small progress because everybody is chasing giant visible success. Big money, big results, big applause. Meanwhile, emotional growth, the kind that truly changes lives, often happens quietly in ordinary moments nobody else notices. A person choosing patience instead of anger, choosing discipline instead of excuses, choosing hope instead of emotional surrender. These are sacred shifts, invisible to the world perhaps, but life-changing internally. A gardener once explained something beautiful to me. He said, when people plant seeds, they become impatient because nothing appears above the soil immediately. So they assume nothing is happening. But underneath, roots are learning how to hold. What wisdom! Human beings are like that too, sometimes the biggest grade. Overall, the season looks unimpressive from the outside. A person may seem ordinary to the world while internally rebuilding their entire life brick by brick. Healing old wounds, creating new habits, learning emotional balance, recovering self-respect. Yet because results are not instantly visible, they become discouraged. They forget that roots matter before fruits appear. Imagine digging up a seed every morning demanding proof of progress. That is how many people treat themselves emotionally. Am I successful yet? Am I healed yet? Am I confident yet? Relax. Growth is happening in places your eyes cannot always measure. And let me tell you something else. Reflection changes your relationship with struggle. Without reflection, pain feels meaningless. But when you pause and notice what challenges are teaching you, suffering begins transforming into wisdom. A man once shared how losing his job unexpectedly destroyed his confidence for months. He felt embarrassed, lost, but one night while reflecting quietly, he realized something surprising. During that difficult season, he had become more patient with people, more humble, more connected to his family, more aware of what truly means. Mattered to him. The pain had shaped him in ways success never did. That realization softened his bitterness. Sometimes life grows you through experiences you would never volunteer for willingly. And when you reflect honestly, you begin seeing that not every difficult season was punishment. Some seasons were preparation disguised as disappointment. There is also humor hidden inside reflection if you are willing to see it. Human beings are wonderfully strange creatures. One day you feel unstoppable because you organized your room and drank enough water. The next day you question your entire future because somebody replied K instead of OK. Emotional stability can be surprisingly fragile sometimes. That is why nightly reflection matters. It grounds you. It reminds you not to take every emotional wave so seriously. A bad day is not a bad life. One awkward interaction does not cancel your progress. One lazy afternoon does not erase months of growth. Imagine if athletes quit training every time they had 1 week session. Nothing meaningful would ever be built. In the same way, emotionally strong people learn to zoom out. They stop judging their entire identity based on one difficult day. A middle-aged father once told his son something unforgettable after the boy failed an important exam. He said, "I'm not worried about one result. I'm watching the kind of man you are becoming through this experience." That sentence contains so much wisdom. Life is not only testing your abilities, it is shaping your character, your patience, your resilience, your perspective, your compassion. And at night, when the world finally becomes quiet, you have a chance to reconnect with that bigger picture. To remind yourself that you are not just chasing achievements, you are becoming someone wiser, someone calmer, someone stronger, someone more awake. That awareness creates emotional endurance. Because now your life is not measured only by outcomes. It is measured by inner evolution too. And perhaps this is why people who reflect deeply often carry a different kind of peace. Not because their life is perfect. Usually it is not. They still face uncertainty, still make mistakes, still have moments where they stare into the fridge repeatedly as if new life answers might magically appear behind the orange juice. But there is softness inside them now, perspective. They understand. And that transformation is not one dramatic event. It is 1,000 quiet choices repeated over time. And every night they gently remind themselves, I am not who I used to be, Maybe not fully where they want to be either, but no longer the same person who once felt lost, fearful, reactive, or hopeless. Little by little, thought by thought, habit by habit, they are becoming someone their younger self would finally feel safe with. And now, when you look at everything together, something becomes very clear. Self-belief was never about becoming someone else. It was never about chasing a perfect version of life where everything finally falls into place without effort, without doubt, without struggle. It was always about something quieter, something deeper, something more honest. It was about how you speak to yourself when no one is listening. It was about whether you keep small promises that nobody claps for. It was about whether you can sit in silence without running from your own thoughts. It was about whether you move forward even when fear is sitting right beside you. It was about whether you stop turning your past into your identity. It was about whether you can end your day by number. Enticing that you are still becoming, even if slowly, even if imperfectly. Because life does not change in one dramatic moment. It changes in repeated decisions, in quiet corrections, in private battles that no one sees but you still choose to win. And over time, those small choices start shaping something powerful inside you, a kind of inner steadiness that does not collapse every time life becomes uncertain. You begin to realize you are not starting from zero every day. You are continuing something. Even on days that feel wasted, something inside you is still learning, still adjusting, still growing roots in places you cannot always see. And maybe that is the most important shift of all. Not becoming fearless, not becoming perfect, but becoming someone who no longer abandons themselves when things get difficult. So when tomorrow comes and life feels normal again, or messy again, or unpredictable again, you will not need to search for a new version of yourself. You will only need to remember what has already been quietly building within you. Not louder, not faster, just steadier. And that is enough.